Detached homes in the city of Toronto are down $170,000 from last year. And for sellers, that sounds really painful. But buyers are right now grinning from ear to ear with leverage right now. The biggest question everyone's been asking is, what's next? Are prices going to keep sliding even further, or should buyers take their chance now and jump in? So let's break down the truth with the latest numbers. Hi, my name is Zen, and if you enjoy my data-driven and number-crunching real estate updates, be sure to like and subscribe. So Toronto area home prices continue to slide, with detached homes down 10% from last year. And that's exactly true. These are the actual numbers from the latest report that came out for August. And you can see right now that the average price is getting very close to $1 million, and it may go lower than that. Last year, I did think that the August pricing would generally be the lowest that we would see, but obviously we had a new president and tariffs and all came in. So everything's up in the air right now. But your biggest stat where everyone's talking about right now is that the detached homes in the 416, which is kind of like the cream of the crop, is down $170,000 right now, or down 10% from last year. Meaning that even though last year the market looked like it was getting better, the tariffs had a really big impact on the market, and the prices are continuing to slide right now. And they're sliding quite a bit despite the fact that the months of inventory isn't at a very, very high level. Now, granted, I will say that general detached and freehold homes should come down a little bit in August because it's very seasonal, unlike condos, but to come down 10% on a year-over-year basis is quite a lot. So when we look at how the market has fared this year relative to last year, when kind of call it at the end of 2024 in Q4, things looked like they were getting better. Sales were increasing. Prices were kind of on the up and up, but obviously they changed. And you see what a big difference 1 year makes with the tariffs. You can see over here that prices are generally down 5%. So this will be your 7th month in a row when you don't adjust it for seasonality that prices are lower than last year. The only month this year where prices were actually higher was January, before the actual effect of the tariffs came in. And you can see that, yes, sales have picked up. They're up 5% from last year. But this is what I was saying even in July, when our board was saying, hey, July looks like they're up and up. No, that's not the case. It's because sales were so anemic in the spring that anyone who was waiting out the tariffs for the uncertainty and trying to get some certainty have started making a move now. Now, granted, having said that, it's not like those people are moving the market that much. It's just that you're going from very little buyers to slightly more buyers. That's it. And you can see that there's an additional 17% of properties that are stuck on the market and they're not actually selling. So there's a lot of choices for buyers, and that's why prices are coming down, because for buyers to actually buy something, the sellers have to adjust to their price. And to give you context as to just how bad it is right now, the biggest and most important stat I always talk about is the months of inventory, which is basically just a ratio of how many unsold properties there are relative to actual buyers. And to be at 5.28, since Toronto Real Estate Board has been tracking the data since 1996, we have never been at 5.28. The last highest number was 5.16 in 1996. So that is to give you context as what the ratio is right now of how many buyers there are to sellers. It's bad. It's really bad. And spoiler alert for my charts later, it's probably going to get worse. And when we break down the market to see how each asset is doing, you can see that, yes, the entry-level semis and towns are performing quite well in Toronto. And when I say quite well, as in like they've fallen the least. And even though towns look like they're up 2%, the number of towns that are actually available in Toronto is so little that I would always count the towns as kind of an outlier, because the data sometimes doesn't make sense and gets skewed by certain purchases and sales because there's so little of them. But what really did surprise me is year over year, the condos are actually only down 2%. So they're only down like 14,000 from the previous year, which is quite surprising. So that's why the biggest headline is that, detaches are down 170,000. But the weird thing on all of this is that the months of inventory is still very, very high in Toronto condos, which kind of makes me want to, dig deeper into this when we actually have the September and October numbers to see where the condos land. Now, as for the suburbs of Toronto, so like your 905, your detaches are doing pretty normal, doing normal detached things, with the months of inventory being at a balanced market. Again, you need a really good detached. That's 10 out of 10 for this basic sell right now. Your semis are actually doing exactly what I think they would be, because this is kind of your entry 3-bedroom home, because it is a lot more affordable as a 3-bedroom home than it is in Toronto. So that's why the semis perform a little bit better. And then your towns also are getting really close to the semis price point, and they've come down quite a bit, but your months of inventory is still quite low. And similar to what we've been expecting, the condos are not performing well in the 905. And I've been saying this for a long time. I think it's going to get even worse in the 905 than it is in Toronto because we have a lot of pre-constructions that are actually finishing in the 905. So I would expect the prices to continue falling in the 905, especially if your entry point in a freehold in the suburbs right now is getting lower and lower. It makes no sense to be buying a condo because for another 20-30%, you can get into a freehold property with a garage, which makes a lot more sense. Hey, it's me interrupting myself. Ready to make a move? Just one free call, no hassle, but decades of experience to work for you. So you can see here, this is the average price chart for all of GTA. And traditionally, you will have prices coming down in August and they will rebound. Where I got wrong last year was that I really thought that as the market was getting better at this low point, 2024 looked like it was the lowest point. However, since tariffs, you can see the gap between this light blue line over here and this dotted white line is basically how much prices are falling. So you can see as I'm coloring it in right here, we've been falling down for this entire year with the exception of January right here. And that's the impact that tariffs are having. So what do I expect prices to do in September? Given the current data, they will spike up a little bit given kind of like what the seasonal trend normally is. The question is just how much. And given that we have so much inventory in the market right now, the buyers have a lot more choices where, again, they wouldn't want to be paying a high number for that property unless they absolutely love it. So I do believe that the spike up in price for September may not be as high as some people will think, even though sales will be increasing. It's just because there's so much choices for buyers right now. And when we look at Toronto detached homes and why they've been doing so poorly, you can see over here that basically a month after tariffs, the gap that they had because the spring market was basically non-existent is really, really big. And when we're talking about a $1.5 million asset plus, the numbers get really, really large. And that's why you have that $170,000 drop off in terms of price from the previous year. Can they rebound like the usual years? Yes, absolutely. But the question is how much? We don't know. Now for condos, even though prices fell 2% from the previous year, you do have to look at kind of how the data is shaping. So this gap over here is also quite large, but the reason why the numbers don't look as bad over here is because this little gap over here is very small because last year we had a really big drop in terms of prices at this time. So if you don't count that huge drop, the prices for condos are actually down by 7 to 8% or 10%. You just can't use that one data that we saw last year in August to kind of measure saying, hey, condos are outperforming, because at the end of the day, there's still about 7 months of inventory for the Toronto condo space. So this is why when we look at the entire market of GTA and the months of inventory and how saying 5.28 was the highest we've ever had, and why I expect we'll be heading higher is because we as a year right now in 2025 are not doing as well as 2024. And you can see that there's this big shoot up in months of inventory, meaning that properties aren't selling, they're taking longer to sell. And I expect that to happen again in September because we have a lot of people who are planning to list. Yes, there are some buyers coming back online, but I do believe that there are more sellers than buyers and by quite multiple fold. So you're going to have that months of inventory increase. So we'll be breaking records for months of inventory in the next few months. Because what's basically happening is, yes, sales are slightly better than last year. You can see over here where the dotted white line is higher than the blue line from last year, but we're still really, really bad compared to the rest of the year. So I do not expect sales to increase that much more. Let's say we're a little bit better because the tariffs are, call it, a little bit behind us, or people are just tired of talking about it. Maybe we're trending over here. It's not going to be that much better. Maybe we're better than 2022, but we're going to be less than all the other years over here. And we can expect a lot more new listings to be coming online, which means that we're going to have a lot of choices for buyers right now. And the reason why I believe that we're going to have a lot more sellers and listings come on the market is anecdotally from our business side, we can see that there's a lot more sellers coming online than are actual buyers. And talking to a lot of other colleagues who are pros in the space and have been doing this for over a decade, they're also turning down listings for sellers who want a price that's completely unrealistic to what the market is dictating. So there's a lot of sellers trying to sell, and I don't know if those sellers are going to just go to some novice agent and just list on the market hoping it gets done. So I do believe there's going to be a saturation of new listings. And when we look at this chart over here, which is a summer listing termination, these are actual data points to show that how many listings are being terminated in the month of August, which is the blue bar, July, which is the orange one, and June, which is the gray one. And you can see in 2025 over here, this cluster of charts, a lot of people have been terminating their listings because they haven't actually gotten it sold. And you saw that huge spike up from 2023 to 2024 because people haven't adjusted their prices yet. So for sellers who actually want to sell and they're actually trying to line up with the expectation, just understand that there's a chunk of these listings that will be relisted in September. So it's going to be a lot of listings sitting on the market. So this is why when we look at active listings towards the tail end of every single summer, you can see that it drops down, it drops down. And we are going to see that bounce back up in September. And I really think that bounce back up is going to be very severe. Because my biggest worry was that we're going to have over 30,000 active listings in spring. And we did definitely have that. And you can see when we dip below 30,000, these are a lot of the terminations. Yes, sales picked up marginally, tiny little bit, but it wasn't enough to move the needle. So when a lot of these terminations are coming online on top of people who are trying to sell, I would not be surprised if we get close to like 35,000, maybe 33,000 active listings, which means that even, yes, there's some buyers coming online. I don't know if we can eat up that type of inventory in the GTA because we haven't seen this type of inventory ever in the Greater Toronto area. This over here was basically historic records of how many active listings, unsold properties there actually have been. So when we get up to over here, we're definitely be breaking more records, which is why I do not think prices are going to get any better anytime soon, despite maybe potentially getting a rate cut, which again, I'll talk more about in the next video.
Before you even think about selling, don't let another chatbot price your biggest asset. Your property is not just another number. Hit the link in the description below and I'll send you a personalized assessment with real data and expert insights so you can sell with confidence on your terms.
Because even when we look at the new listings data over here, you can see that, yes, we had a big drop off over here. But at the end of the day, this dotted white line for 2025 is still the highest August we've ever had in the last 8 years. So yes, unsold inventories has come down a little bit, but do I expect a really big spike up in new listings? Absolutely. And this is why I'll say to sell in September, you have to be priced right and you have to look good. You can't just put a property on the market right now because it's just not going to sell because there's so many choices right now. We've never had this many options for buyers to buy ever. So buyers right now are basically being rewarded for waiting to find that right home for them. Whether that be from price or the way the property looks, you have to check all the boxes. And to just add to the gravity of just how bad this August actually has been, you can see highest active listings, meaning unsold properties ever. So worst August in terms of leftover inventory. Then you look at sales. Yes, we're not the worst one ever, but we're only marginally better over here than last year. So yes, sales have ticked up a tiny little bit, but it comes back to what I said in July. We may have just had some delayed sales because of the tariffs. And that's kind of why the summer month was stronger than the spring months. And then when we look at new listings, same thing. 2025 was crazy strong outside of the outlier that was during the pandemic. And then your months of inventory hasn't been this high, 5.28. Again, this is historically high, and I expect us to get close to 6 in the following few months. So given that we're expecting the unsold inventory to increase past 30,000 after September when inventory is up, and to break records on how high months of inventory goes, which basically points to the fact that yes, prices should be coming down. And when you have a slow market, you get weird things that happen where a lot of investors are going bankrupt right now because they bought into pre-construction thinking that the prices were going to go up forever. So you understand how all of this is shaping out in the Toronto real estate market for people who have bought pre-construction condos as a speculation. Make sure you click on the video that's on the screen right now. I'll see you in the next video. Until next time, your move, your future. See ya!